Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at Liebste Emmanuel, Herzog der Frommen, which translates to Dearest Emmanuel, Leader of the Righteous. This is a pretty interesting chorale, if anything because of the time signature. I know that Bach did compose using more like old-timey time signatures since his music is, well, obviously traditional, but time signatures where we would see longer note values used, like half notes and even whole notes, are more of a hallmark of music of the Renaissance. So what I would consider early music, or on the front end of the early music spectrum. So it's interesting to see a chorale in this time signature just visually, but other than that, I'm really just treating it like a chorale in 3/4 time. It has similar harmonic rhythm. Really, there are just two usual suspects as far as the harmonic rhythm is concerned in triple meter chorales. We have just regular on every beat, or we have a harmonic rhythm on beat 1 and beat 3. So here we have pretty much exclusively harmonic rhythm on every beat, so we're just going to analyze it straightforward. So two sharps in the key signature, we start on B minor, we end on B major, and where there might be an argument to be made that we start in the key of B minor, I reckon we start in the key of F sharp minor, and our first cadence is an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of F sharp minor. So we're actually starting off on a 4 chord. This is another chorale where the key signature doesn't agree with the first key. But we have B minor going to another B minor chord, B, B, F sharp, and D, with the passing 7th in the bass. And then we have G sharp, B, E sharp, and D, which is E sharp fully diminished 7th, which is 7, 6, 5, because it's over the third of the chord. And then we have some passing tones in the lower 3 voices, and as you can see, we have like a passing tonic triad here, F sharp, A, and F sharp, but with the D in the melody, we can't fully analyze that. We could talk about it and see that that's what's being implied, but on the page, it's really, the full picture shows that there's a D in the chord, so I'm not going to analyze it that way. But it does make sense because we have 7-6 resolving to some semblance of a tonic before we get another dominant functioning chord, E sharp, G sharp, G sharp, and C sharp, which is C sharp major over E sharp, which is another dominant functioning chord. This time it's 5, our actual dominant. So 7 going to 5. We've seen this progression pop up in a couple of the chorales, and really there are a couple of situations that happen. There is like some passing tonic going on in between the two of them, or you just look at the entirety of the beats that they encompass as one large dominant gesture, like it's a static progression because the function isn't changing over the 2 beats. In this case, I feel like it's kind of a combination of those 2 things, because the tonic is present, just not entirely intact, but the dominant is being stretched over the entirety of not just these like 2 beats here, but even into the 3rd beat, the chord before our final cadential chord. We have C sharp, E, and E sharp and C sharp, which is taking the chord, and it's incomplete, so we only have a 3rd above the chord, so this would just be, we don't have a 5th, so this would be 8-3, because we have the octave above it and a 3 below it, and we don't just want to put 3 there. But then we have F sharp minor afterwards, F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, and A, which is our tonic triad. Again, trying to be more accurate in my analyses with, if I wrote 5-3 there, we would know what was happening, but here the figured bass implies that the chord does not have a 5th, and it's just an octave and a 3rd, which is more accurate to what's happening on the page. And of course we have this delayed 7th here, this delayed passing tone, before we have our tonic that we cadence on. So our next phrase ends in a perfect authentic cadence in the key of D major, and I think we modulate straight away to the key of D major here. This F sharp minor triad is our mediant, and then we get some adjacent harmony going on. We get B, D, G, and B, which is G major over B, which that's 4-6, it's our subdominant. And then we get an interesting chord here. We have C sharp, E, E, and G, and we might be able to analyze this as 7. I see this A on this beat right here and hear it more as A, C sharp, E, and G. And really the difference between 5 and 7 is A versus G, but I look at this as an A7 chord over C sharp, so I'm going to call this 5-6-5. 5-6-5 or 7, I think they're more or less achieving the same thing, so it's really just splitting hairs here, but my intuition tells me this is a 5-6-5 chord. And then we have D major, D, A, D, and F sharp, which is our tonic triad. Anticipation in the melody before we get A, D, and E. We know this D is a 4-3 suspension over the bass before we get the resolution on beat 2. That's A, C sharp, and E, which is our 5 chord. Another delayed 7th before we cadence on our tonic D major, D, F sharp, A, and D. Looking ahead, we have actually a deceptive cadence, which is cool, still in the key of D major here, but we're expecting a tonic triad here, but we get B minor instead of D major. So moving ahead, we have F sharp, A, D, and A, which is D major in first inversion. We'll just write the figured bass in. Then we get C sharp, A, E, and A. That's A major over C sharp, which is a 5-6 chord. And then we get D major in root position, D, A, D, and F sharp, which is our tonic triad. Then we get G, G, D, and B with a passing tone in the tenor. That's G major in root position. That's a 4 chord. And then we have E, B, G, and B with a I guess this would be a, well actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm thinking still in the key of B minor here because we're going to end on a B minor chord. So I look at this B as maybe an accented non-chord tone. It doesn't necessarily have to be an accented non-chord tone, but I'm going to mark it there just for the sake of what's how I'm going to analyze it. So if we analyze it literally, it would be a 2 chord, but I think this C sharp is really bringing us to the D in the melody, and it's part of this chord, C sharp, E. Oh no, we have another B in there. Never mind. I don't need to mark that B as a non-chord tone. We have another B in there, C sharp, E, B, and G, which is C sharp minor 7 flat 5 over E, that's 7, 6, 5. We would expect 4 to go to 7. Sorry for rambling like that. And instead of 7 going to 1, we have 7 going to 6. B, B, F sharp, and D. An interesting deceptive cadence. I've never seen... Actually, let me scan my memory real quick. I don't think I've seen it in the past. I could be wrong though. 4, 7, 6 as a deceptive cadence. It's almost like an imperfect deceptive cadence because we would expect 5 going to 6, but here we have 7 going to 6, which is interesting. I don't think we've seen it, and if we have seen it, pardon me for not recalling, but I don't think we have. And then our last cadence in the A section is, interestingly enough, a half cadence in the key of B minor. So we're looking for a point on which we modulate. And I think this is the most interesting progression in the chorale, actually, bringing us back to this idea of F sharp minor, but with F sharp major preceding it. It makes sense because of what's going to follow, but with the repeat, it's interesting juxtaposing F sharp major against F sharp minor. So here we have B minor 7 over A, B, F sharp, and D. So we'll just change the figured bass to reflect that with the 4-2. Anticipation in the melody before we get G, B, E, and E, which is E minor over G. That would be a 2-6 chord in the key of D major, and I think this is where we're modulating to the key of B minor. I know we had a B minor chord here, but it's unlikely that we get a tonic 7 chord. I think we've seen one tonic 7 chord in all of the chorales so far where the tonic is very unashamedly present in the key. It's very, very uncommon, and it's more so a byproduct of suspension and counterpoint rather than it being a vertical sonority. And I think here it's still functioning as a chord supporting D major rather than B minor, interestingly enough. But this E major is when things start to sound like we're going down to the key of B minor, especially here in the alto. So we're going to change this E minor from 2-6 to 4-6 in the key of B minor. This D is a passing 7th, and then we get G, E, C sharp, and E, which is another 7 chord, another type of 4 going to 7. This time we have C sharp diminished over G, which would be 7, 6, 4. So it's relatively, it's very uncommon for us to see 7, 6, 4 chords, but it's not unprecedented. We have a neighbor tone in the melody and an anticipation, sorry, a neighbor tone in the alto and anticipation in the melody as well. But it's interesting how we have this half step going down in the, actually, am I doing that right? No, we're in the key of B minor. Apologies, this is not a 7, 6, 4 chord, this is a 2, 6, 4 chord. Goodness, I'm so sorry for confusing that. I'm still thinking in terms of D major. I'm mixing them up because they're relative keys rather than keys that are not distant but adjacent to one another, or even distant. On the circle of fifths, I'm treating common chords as they were in the previous key. But no, this is 4 going to 2, 6, 4. It's very interesting. And then we, of course, we cadence on 5. And this is a particular type of half cadence called a Phrygian half cadence. And it's kind of unusual because the half cadence is 2, 6, 4 going to 5. We usually expect like a 4, 6 chord, like this chord right here. But with all the counterpoint going on, the chord does get that C in there as well, and introducing the F sharp as well. There's a lot of tones going on here, and with the counterpoint it makes it kind of difficult to pick apart the chord exactly, but I think this is a 2 going to 5, and this is another example of like a static progression. We have 2 chords that are functioning as predominants over a larger swath of the harmonic rhythm. So really you can treat this entire both of these beats as part of the same gesture moving to 5. Bach just sort of stagnates has kind of a negative connotation, but he like levitates before falling to 5, which will resolve in the next section, but turns to F sharp minor at the repeat, which is interesting. But 2, 6, 4 going to 5, another take on the Phrygian half cadence. Okay, first cadence of the second section, we have an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of D major. And it's a short phrase, so it doesn't leave us a lot of room for modulation, but I think we stay in B minor for the first couple of beats. So we have the 5 resolution to 1 here, B, B, D, and F sharp. That's B minor, which is our tonic. Then we have D, B, D, and F sharp, which is B minor over D. That is our tonic triad in first inversion. And I think in the key of D major, it's also our 6, 6 chord. Kind of interesting to see 6, 6. I remember being told that 6, 6 was typically not a chord that gets used a lot. I see it used all the time, so I don't know where that came from, but I distinctly remember learning that in class. I wonder why. It's kind of like it sounds like tonic triad, but it feels like the root is wrong or something. I think that was something like it, because we're expecting B minor with we're expecting D major, but we have a B in it somewhere. It's like the fact that the chord, it's not super important. I just remember learning that rule. Maybe you can verify that if you learned that in your harmony textbook as well, or in class. But we have 6 going to E, B, D, and G. A root position E minor 7 chord, that would be 2, 7. Kind of uncommon to see, but not unprecedented. And then we have C sharp, A, E, and A. That's A major over C sharp. That's 5, 6. And then we cadence on D major, D, A, D, and F sharp. Imperfect authentic cadence because the melody has F sharp in it rather than the root of the chord D. Alright, next phrase ends in a half cadence in the key of B minor. Kind of an unusual phrase as well. Kind of an interesting, not an interesting progression per se, but the way that it ends considering how short it is. So I think we modulate pretty much straight away. I don't look at this D as a pivot chord, but rather the B minor as the pivot chord. That's just what it sounds like to me. So this B minor in first inversion, D, B, F sharp, and B, which would be 6, 6 in the key of D major, is now 1, 6 in the key of B minor. So kind of like an in and out progression here where we have, or I guess modulation scheme where we have 1, 6 turning into 6, 6 and 6, 6 turning into 1, 6. So where we visit D major briefly and then we go back to B minor for the rest of the chorale via the same chord we left. And we've seen Bach do this in the past too. Then we have A sharp, E, C sharp, and C sharp. Sorry, I read that chord from top to bottom, but it's A sharp diminished over C sharp. That's 7-6. And when we see 1-6 going to 7-6, we typically expect our tonic triad and root position afterwards. We have B, D, F sharp, and B, which is in fact our tonic triad and root position. And then we have F sharp major, F sharp, A sharp, F sharp, and C sharp, which is our tonic triad and our dominant triad and root position. And then we get a repeat, which is a respelling where the melody and the tenor swap voices. So no need to reanalyze. Okay, looking ahead, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of B minor, and we stay in B minor for the rest of the chorale. So we have B, B, F sharp, and D. That's our tonic triad. We have E, A sharp, G, and C sharp. That's A sharp, fully diminished 7th over E, which is 7-4-3. And then we get G, B, E, and B. That's E minor over G. So it's 4-6. A bit of a transitive progression here. We have 7 going to 4, which is against the grain of the cycle of fifths, but we're just going to 4 via a different direction because 4 is going to go where we expect it to 5 or 7, some type of dominant functioning chord. Here we have 5, F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, and A sharp, which is F sharp major. Then we have E, C sharp, F sharp, and A sharp, and sort of reaffirming that spelling with the tones that we have on beat. I guess that would be 2 and. So this is just a 4-2 chord. We have E, C sharp, F sharp, and A sharp, which is a fully realized 7th chord. So the figured bass would just be 4-2. And that resolves where we expect it to. B minor in first inversion, D, B, F sharp, and B, our tonic triad. Then we have E, E, G, and C sharp. Passing tone in the tenor as well. That's C sharp diminished in first inversion, so 2-6. Bach loves 2-6 chords, especially in cadential contexts. Then we have F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, and A sharp. Apologies, this D is also a non-chord tone, a non-chord tone 7th as well. No wait, no, I'm sorry. This is not a 7th. B would be our 7th, not D. Apologies. But yeah, F sharp major is our 5, which is where we would expect 2-6 to go. And then we get another F sharp major chord, similar to how this half cadence worked, where we saw the dominant spanned over 2 beats. In fact, we see the dominant spanned over long periods of time throughout the chorale. We have 5 here for 2 beats, 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 7 and 5 paired together for 3 beats. We see the dominant spanned for lengthy periods of time throughout this chorale. It's a little bit of a harmonic motive. It's interesting. And then we have an anticipation here in the melody before we cadence on B major, which is what we would expect at the end of a minor chorale, as Bach typically ends his minor chorales with the Picardy third. It's uncommon for him to do anything other than that. And that is going to conclude today's analysis. So, as far as takeaways are concerned, trying to be more specific with the figured bass. It's not often that I have to be super specific. Like the majority of the time, the chords just operate the way that they are expected to. They're fully realized, so the figured bass is just written in the way that it typically occurs, but sometimes the figure bass is wonky, and I'm going to try my best to be more consistent with that and have the figure bass reflect the actual voicing of the chord rather than the implied chord. It doesn't really hurt, but it is more accurate as far as the point of the figure bass is concerned, because I would be giving a keyboardist, someone who would be realizing, or I guess it would be a keyboardist, an organ player, or a harpsichordist or piano player. If they were realizing the figured bass, they would be playing the chords, so might as well be as accurate as possible, even though for the analysis it kind of articulates the same thing. But yeah, interesting chord progressions, somewhat, especially at the end of the first section, extended dominance and playing with the harmonic rhythm. Actually, we see 5 occur on beat kind of like a play on the harmonic rhythm where we get this 1 and 2 getting the same chord and then a new chord on beat 3, which is the second permutation of harmonic rhythm we expect in triple meter chorales, like I was talking about at the beginning, where we'll either get a harmonic rhythm of every beat getting a chord or every first and third beat getting a chord, and they're pretty commonly used. I'd say it's like 50-50. It's a coin flip. If one were to be ahead, maybe the 1 and 3 like slightly more ahead based on the chorales that I've looked at so far, but I don't think I've looked at enough triple meter chorales in general to affirm that confidently. So take that with a grain of salt if you're watching this and looking for like statistical information, because I don't have that, not as much as I do with duple meter chorales. But I'm going to cap the video off with that. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel by doing so. If you're interested in following me along on this journey to analyze all of the chorale harmonizations, feel free to subscribe and hit the notification icon. I upload once a day if you'd like a daily dose of analysis or a daily dose of Bach or both. But again, thank you so much for watching the video. I look forward to tomorrow's analysis, and I hope you take care.